Yeah, just look at me. Am I in you guys' way? I'm sorry.
They're right.
Yeah, you can just look at me, and whenever I ask you a question, kind of repeat the question. I'll be like, so how long have you lived in San Diego? Well, I lived in San Diego for 10 years.
Okay.
So kind of repeat the question because I'll be editing it.
Yes.
And we want the audience to know what the reference is.
Yes, sir.
So something like, how long have you been painting? Well, I've been painting for so-and-so amount of years.
Gotcha.
We are rolling. And can I have you state your name and spell it out for the record?
Yes, my name is Louis Richard Velasquez, Louis. Richard, R-I-C-H-A-R-D. Velasquez is V-E-L-A-S-Q-U-E-Z.
Perfect. Okay, Richard.
Louis.
Louis, I'm sorry. Middle name Richard.
Middle name Richard.
Let me think. Explain. Well, we'll talk about what we have here today, and then we'll go back in history about how long you've been in Porterville. So, explain to me what this gallery, what this exhibit is about today.
The exhibit here at the Porterville Historical Museum was from an invitation from the curator, and I did kind of a retrospective, and I brought in my paintings that some go back as far as 1959. And I have a theme for it. It's called Love One Another.
And when you say love one another, how does your art reflect that message?
I have done, the art that I've created over the years is not to make pretty pictures. It's to make art that forces the viewer to think about what they're seeing, to react emotionally, intellectually, and aesthetically. And in this particular theme of Love One Another, it was based because of what I was seeing on television of the migrant children being arrested and separated from the parents. And as I went through my collection of paintings to bring here, two of the paintings stood out. One is the one of the Statue of Liberty, which I did 25 years ago for my wife's law office. I never finished it for her until it presented itself as being part of this theme. And the other one is a drawing in pencil, and it shows migrants crossing from Mexico to the United States.
So, like you just said, it feels like this exhibit and some of your art was inspired by what you were seeing in the news. What in the past or any of your artwork, where do you usually get your inspiration from?
The inspiration for my paintings comes from many sources. Initially, I was copying cartoons from the Bugs Bunny and all those characters off the cornflakes boxes. And my teacher in elementary school was a professional artist. He'd worked for Walter Lantz and Walt Disney, and he would draw for us. Stimulated me. And then my mother bought us an 18-volume set of a children's encyclopedia, and I saw all the great paintings there. And my mom was very Catholic. She had a great big Bible. I saw all the old master paintings there. So from about the age of 10, I was inspired.
Great. Explain to me, we'll get into the artistic aspects of it, the medium you choose to use and the style that best describes your work.
The medium I've always chosen to use are two. One is the pencil, just for its pencil and paper, and the other is oil painting. My style has evolved from realism. I consider myself to be a modernist realist. I can't get away from realism because it's important to me to be able to relate to what's being presented. Although I love Jackson Pollock's work that's thrown all over the canvas, and I recognize him as a great painter, a very creative painter, I try to combine my styles, much like what Picasso would do. He would combine styles together.
Great, that's awesome. Like I really love the detail in it and the color, like similar to that right there, the color palette. Yeah, I love that. Now we'll get into your ties to Porterville, and then we'll segue into your tie to this museum here. Tell me about growing up in Porterville and your experiences here in Porterville related to your artwork, how it ties together, how it blends in.
I was born in Porterville in October 25th, 1943. My parents had immigrated to the United States, and I say migrated, not immigrated, because they came without documentation. Dad was 3 years old, Mom was 6 months old, and eventually they settled in 1921 in the Porterville area. And it was, we had good schools. At that time, Porterville was only 6,000 people. So the Mexican community was mostly involved with agriculture. My dad and mom worked in agriculture. I grew up working with them in agriculture, harvesting fruits and vegetables all up and down the state with my parents. It was the library over here, the public library was my place to study art. We didn't have computers, we didn't have any of that stuff to research that we can do now. So I spent a lot of time at the public library reading the art books.
Cool. I'm going to change the shot a little bit and I'll ask you a few more questions. You're doing great, by the way.
Thanks.
Very, very. I really want the viewers to get a sense of your work, but also what influences your work. And usually with a lot of artists, it's like their environment, their city that really, a lot of people don't know too much about Porterville, so I kind of want to highlight that.
Yeah.
So that looks great right there. You can still look at me. So when I was in the other room, big painting, Stagecoach, the curator told me that you painted that when you were 17. You want to tell me the story about how they approached you about it, just from beginning to end, kind of how that happened.
I'm very proud of the Stagecoach painting that's in the main room of the museum. It's about 6 feet by 12 feet. It happened in this particular way. In 1960, I was 16, just turning 17, and we were all aware that next year was going to be the centennial celebration of the city of Porterville. And one day we're in the art class. I remember the teacher's name, Virginia Sackett, and Mr. Don Howard, tall, very kind of stern-looking man, ex-military. He comes in and he walks right to the principal, to the art teacher, and they kind of talk a little bit. And then all of a sudden, Miss Sackett says, "Louis, Don Howard wants to see you outside." And I go, "Oh," and all the kids are going, "Ooh, ooh," and you know, you're in trouble. So I go outside and there's two men standing there dressed in suits. And I go, I was a little afraid, I didn't know what was going on. And Mr. Howard said, "Louis, the Chamber of Commerce wants a mural painted for their year-long celebration, for centennial celebration. And they asked me if I could get the art class to paint them a mural." And he says, "No, I want the right person to do it, and it's here. Louis can do it for you." And they said, "Can you paint a big picture?" I go, "Sure I can." And I said, "Well, what do you want me to paint?" They said, "How about a stagecoach coming into town, make it look like an old western town, and make sure you put a post and say, 'Welcome to Porterville.'" And I said, "I can do that." And then it took a couple of weeks. They brought this huge canvas in the room, and they put it in the art room, and Mr. Howard said, "You can paint 3 hours a day, and you've got to get it finished by the end of the year." Well, I turned 17 in October, and I didn't finish it, working 3 hours a day with the other kids there. So my brother and I took it to my dad's house, and I finished it in the garage, and I took it right back to the school. That painting is really something that touches my heart. And I joined the Army in 1964, and in 1965, the museum opened up. My parents sent me this article on the museum, and there's a picture of the interior, and there's the painting in the main foyer. So I had first leave. I came down, visit my mom and dad, and I came to the museum, and the ladies were sitting there, the ladies that usually take care of the museums. And I said, "Wow, what a great painting." I didn't say who I was. They go, "Oh, that's a great painting. I just love it." And they go, "Yes, made by a high school kid." And I go, "Wow, that's really nice." And so you had to sign a log book. So I signed the log book, and then I went home. I didn't tell them anything. They called me that evening. They said, "Every evening we read that log book, we see who came to visit, and your name is in there. That was you that came in, right?" And I go, "Yeah, it was me." "Well, you got to come in tomorrow. We'd like to meet you in person." And so I did. Got to meet the ladies here. They're wonderful people. A couple of them have passed on already, and it's just been a great relationship. And you know, I'm so proud of that painting being here. It's opened all the doors for me. It really has.
It's great work at such a young age. Like at 17, I was playing video games. And you're creating like this masterpiece that sits in a museum. To tie it back in with Porterville and your artwork and other artists out here in Porterville and surrounding communities, like rural communities, like where there's farm labor and like small towns. What do you think art means to those communities, and how does it enrich it, and how do they work together, art and community?
One of the things I've done in art, and I'm going back now to what I said before about, I got this encyclopedia when I was 10 years old, and I'm looking through the P letter of the book, and there's all these great paintings. Now I can reference every one of them. I looked up Leonardo, Rembrandt, I looked up Van Dyck, and you name it, I was looking up reading their biographies. That's what really stimulated me in terms of the historical part of art. Even today, I always read about artwork. I've not read all these great novels about literature. They don't seem to mean much to me, but you give me a book on Rembrandt and I'll read it and I'll buy it and I'll have it and keep it. In the community, what's happened, as I've seen, is this. As my mom and dad worked in agriculture, I've been a fruit worker. I've picked fruit all my life until I joined the Army at the age of 20. And some of the subject matter that I painted are farm workers. And I even have self-portraits of my dad, myself and my dad, and working in picking fruit. Art is a form of communication. Some of the forms that I've studied are the ancient paintings from 25, 30, 40,000 years ago, but that are in France, like Altamira and Lascaux in France. And you've seen that these paintings have endured for 40,000 years. And they express a lot of things. One of the classes I loved at San Diego State was African art. African art had no value for sales like today's artists have to make a living. They made art for the purpose of honoring their forefathers. And when Picasso saw African art, he just went head over heels because he saw that African art is mostly focused on formal design. They never tried to paint anything the way it really looks. They use, as in this particular painting, colors to express certain ideas and feelings. Color can make you change from one thing to another. When I worked in law enforcement, we learned that if you put a criminal into a room that's got like a pink color around it, it just calms them down. So color impacts all of us in some way. We're either blue or we're happy. We can make people feel happier by certain colors or saddened by others. And what I saw as I evolved as a person, as an adult, I saw that paintings were being used by many artists to express their political ideas. And when I was a police officer, I would see some of the young Latinos that were against police brutality. And they would, the murals there in the neighborhoods would have like a police car, and they would be on flyer, and they'd put blue eyes on the headlights as though it were a person, and they put a pig nose on it. So they were trying to say something through paintings. It's a nonverbal communication that you can really sense, and I try to do that with my paintings. I have several paintings here that are pretty much in that particular direction.
Great. We'll change the shot, and we'll be wrapping this up very shortly. You're doing great. Good answers. You're going to give me a lot to edit with.
Throw that out. Throw that out. We need to be more calm. This guy's too political.
So, I mean, that's the note I'm going to touch on next.
Yeah.
And today, you don't have to go into detail about what's going on, but in today's political climate and how the world is changing and how things are going, what would you say to a future artist who's inspired by what's going on, similar to how you're inspired? What would you say to a future artist, a young boy or girl who sees your work and is inspired by it? Like what kind of like motivation, what kind of like words could you share with that child to go with it?
I hope that when the exhibit is seen by artists of all ages, not just particular young kids, but I would like for them to see that this artist here painted these things with his hands and materials, and not through digital media, which I have nothing against digital media. In fact, some of the great artists in history, especially Vermeer, used some projection techniques using camera oscura in order to trace images, and then he would use his creative ability, his color sense, his design to move things around and to be able to color it to his satisfaction. So there is a place for digital art, but I think that a lot of artists can learn to use their hands and their eyes and the study. It's slower, of course, but it's something that once you master that particular ability to paint a picture or make a drawing, and it'll take you maybe 10 hours or 2 weeks, but something on digital art, you can do it 15, 20 minutes and just move things around really quick. So I hope that the exhibit will touch kids to say, I want to do that too. And they can do that.